Hi, we're going to do 15 painting techniques, and this is what it looks like. This is a painting I did with some painting techniques in it. And it makes painting look more interesting when you incorporate different painting techniques into the art piece. So some of the painting techniques we're going to do are wet and wet, gravito, dry brush, splattering, some printing, intaglio, blending, stippling, layering. Those are just a few. So the first one is going to be wet and wet technique, where we're going to put a wash of color into a wet space. So we wet that area with water. This is normal paper, so it just absorbs the water very quickly. But you want to let that space be filled with some water, and then you put in a wash of that color, whatever color you're using, a wash of the color into that space. So the water helps to transport that color into different areas, and you get some really nice effects with it. This is a watercolor technique, and you know, a lot of times you paint the sky with it. You get to touch up put a touch of another color, so you can get a little bit of blending there. So the second technique is blending, and this one color blending here is where you're moving from a dark value to a lighter value. So you start with a nice strong value, and then as the paint finishes from the brush, you get a lighter value. And then you add a little bit of water to that and you spread the color. Another thing you can do is add some white to the color and get a lighter value with it. Or you can do both. So you get a nice gradient look, and what you want is a nice smooth effect. So notice the brush strokes are going from side to side and not up and down, and not all different directions. It's just one kind of brush stroke. So the second one is blending with two colors. And so we're using blue and we're using red, and both blue and red are primary colors. And primary colors are called face colors. And when these two mix in the middle, you're going to get a secondary color being formed, and that secondary color will be violet. Where there's more blue than red, you get a blue violet. Where there is more red than blue, you get a red violet. Both colors must be wet in order for the blending or the merging to take place. If you find your paints are drying out, just give it a puff of water from your spray bottle. Again, you want to have a nice smooth effect, so you keep your brush strokes in one direction. The next technique is stippling, and stippling is really an application of points or dots onto the surface of your paper. So I'm using a small brush with a nice point, and my brush is vertical. You don't keep your brush diagonal for this technique. Keep your brush nice and vertical. Stippling is also a drawing technique. The closer you put your dots of colors, the stronger the value. The further away you put your dots, the lighter the value. You can also blend two colors. So where these colors blend, they do so optically from a distance about 6 feet, and both colors will tend to look violet. The fourth technique is scumbling, and scumbling is using circular strokes, circular brush strokes. So you do these circular brush strokes all over. Notice that this is more texture than every technique that we've done so far. Very nice. This works nicely to do foliage in the trees, in some shrubs. You can even do this for curly hair, and even the the texture of an animal's here we're doing the soft and the hard edge. So we'll do the hard edge first and then the soft edge so you can see the difference. I'm using a flat brush. In a hard edge painting, the edges of the shape is clearly defined. To do the soft edge, I'm using a round brush. I'm not putting a lot of paint on it because I want to allow the paint to finish on the bar brush so I can get those nice soft edges. And here I'm using those same circular motions but closer together so that you can see the soft edges of the shape. The edges are not as clearly defined as the hard edge. The next technique will be dry brush, and I'll be using a bristle brush for dry brush technique. The dry brush, you take up a little bit of paint on the edge of the tip of the brush, or the tip of the bristles, and then you start with a strong color, and then you flick your wrist to get this dry brush effect, or this lighter effect. This works nicely for reflections and for grass in a meadow. Scribito is the next technique, and scribito is like etching into color. So this color must be wet. So you just put down a layer of color. And while the paint is still wet, then you take the tip of something, and I'm going to use the tip of the handle of the paintbrush, and I'm just going to etch in some lines in here, some curly lines. You can also layer color underneath, let it dry, and then put another color over that, and then etch so you see the color peeping through. Masking is the next technique, and I'm using masking tape for this. In masking, you want to block out the areas you do not want color in. You can use paper to mask also, you just have to hold on that paper so the color doesn't go under the paper. Ensure that the paint is still wet when you remove the masking tape. When it's dried, it's a little bit more challenging to take out or to remove. It can easily tear the paper. So we have stencil next, and I'm going to fold a small piece of paper and cut out a stencil. Simple heart shape stencil. A stencil can give you 2 prints. The cutout will give you a positive print, and the shape itself, the paper shape, will give you a negative print. So the cutout, in that cutout space, the paint goes on the inside. Once you bring a stencil print, you do an up and down motion to apply your paint. If you do it sideways, then the paint will go under the stencil and it will just distort your edges, and you don't want that. Up and down motion. I'm using a round brush. You can use a stencil brush. It's really about controlling your paint. But to use the shape and apply the paint on the outside to get that negative image. Now we move on to printing. But before we go into printing, this is going to be the glazing or the layering technique, and the paint must be dry before you apply your layer. So glazing or layering is where you have a color underneath or shape underneath, and the paint is totally dried, and then you put a wash of color over that. So we're going to give this a chance to dry so that we can get back to it. It will be the last one that we do. So printing, I'm going to just do block printing here, and I'm just going to squash up a piece of paper and use this as a block for printing. You can get some really interesting textures with a piece of mashed up paper. Really nice textures. Next technique is splattering. You want to load your brush with water as well as paint, and then you use another brush and you hit it. You could even pull back the bristles on your brush and get some nice splattering effects. A lot of times people do this in the sky area to get some stars, but you can just do that, you know, wherever you want to. In pastels, using thick amounts of paint, and you apply that onto your painting surface. So you just take up a lot of paint with your brush or a painting knife, and you just put it onto your surface. When this is dried, you get some nice textures remaining. You can put a second color and do your mixing or your blending on your surface. It allows easy blending and mixing of colors. Now, violet and red, blue and red, when you mix them in certain proportions, the resulting color, yes, is violet, but it can even look almost black. So now this next technique is sponging. You want to sponge a little damp, and you just simply press it onto this piece. Because you want to get that nice sponge technique, sponge design into that space, and then we finally finishing the glazing technique. So we have our underlying color, and we're applying a glaze, a light glaze of another color over it. When you do this, you want to make sure that you understand when you mix these two colors what you will get. If you want to get a nice effect, you need to understand mixing colors and the resulting color that you will get when you mix two colors. And this is like mixing two colors. So that's it, folks. 15 painting techniques. It's nice. It makes a good painting if you do about 5 or more painting techniques into your artwork. Your painting tend to look a lot more interesting.